The street was bustling with people, all in a hurry. A lone musician set up his small guitar on the corner, strumming softly, hoping someone would notice, but no one paused. People walked past, ears plugged with headphones, eyes glued to their phones. He could feel the sting of being invisible, but he didn't give up. A young woman stopped for a second, tapping her foot to the rhythm, but quickly moved on. A businessman barely glanced at him, muttering about being late. Even a group of children giggled, pointing, but not in a mean way. They simply didn't understand. It seemed like no one would care. Until something shifted. Without warning, a loud crash echoed from across the street. A cyclist had collided with a parked cart. People gasped. And in that moment of chaos, the musician's melody changed. His fingers moved faster, more deliberate, almost like he was calling for attention without speaking. Slowly, heads began to turn. Someone paused, then another. The notes weren't just music anymore. They were commanding attention. The rhythm swirled around the street like an invisible current, pulling everyone's focus toward him. A soft murmur ran through the crowd, curiosity replacing indifference. Even the children stopped giggling and stared. Wide-eyed, a woman whispered to her friend, "Did you hear that?" The businessman frowned, his phone forgotten in his hand. The performer's eyes sparkled, not with arrogance, but with determination. Something extraordinary was about to unfold, and no one could look away. The music shifted again, slower now, almost haunting. A passerby dropped a coin into the small open case, then stopped. Another followed, then a few more. What started as curiosity quickly became fascination. People were leaning in, drawn to the sound they had ignored minutes ago. A man in a business suit muttered to his companion, "I don't know why, but I can't stop listening." The performer's fingers danced across the strings, each note telling a story. The crowd wasn't just watching. They were experiencing something they hadn't expected to feel on a busy street corner. Suddenly, a child stepped forward, clapping softly, inspiring a ripple of applause. One by one, the pedestrians joined in, creating a harmony of admiration. The performer smiled faintly, a quiet acknowledgement of the change around him. He had turned indifference into attention, chaos into wonder, all without saying a word. Even the cyclist from earlier, embarrassed and flustered, stopped to watch, his fallen cart forgotten, his frustration replaced by awe. People were taking out their phones, capturing the moment, but none of them could capture the magic that had already taken hold in the street itself. And then, as if the city itself had held its breath, the performer struck the final chord, a long, lingering note that echoed into the corners of the street. Silence followed for a heartbeat. Then the crowd erupted. Cheers, applause, and amazed murmurs filled the space. The musician, once invisible, had become the center of the world. The crowd wasn't just watching anymore. They were leaning in, mesmerized. People whispered to one another, trying to figure out how such a simple performer could command such attention. The notes seemed to carry a story of struggle, patience, and quiet resilience that everyone suddenly recognized. A street vendor paused mid-sale, staring. Even the security guard, usually stern and unmoved, leaned against his post. Captivated, the musician's fingers flew across the strings effortlessly, each note perfectly timed to evoke surprise, suspense, and awe. A young couple, who had been arguing moments before, stopped and held hands, smiles forming as the music washed over them. A mother, holding her child, let the small one tap along to the rhythm. The innocence and joy spreading like a ripple through the crowd. Someone in the back gasped audibly. A businessman whispered, almost to himself, How how is he doing that? Others around him exchanged glances, equally baffled. The performer had somehow turned a mundane street corner into a stage of wonder, and everyone felt lucky to witness it. And then, the performer slowed again, eyes closed, letting the final few notes linger in the cool air. The crowd went silent, holding their collective breath. In that stillness, the street felt transformed. What had started as indifference was now pure respect and admiration. He had won them over, not with words, but with patience, skill, and quiet confidence. Just as the applause settled into a hum, a man at the edge of the crowd stepped forward. He was dressed sharply, holding a folder, looking impressed but hesitant. "I don't usually do this," he said, "but have you considered performing on a bigger stage?" The performer paused, opening his eyes slowly. He nodded politely, not with arrogance, but with quiet curiosity. The crowd leaned in, sensing that something even bigger was about to happen. I've never performed outside this street," he admitted, softly. Suddenly, the man handed him a business card. "We host live events downtown. You have talent that deserves more than a corner street. Think about it," he said, smiling. The performer's eyes widened slightly, not just at the opportunity, but at the recognition of all the nights he had spent ignored, playing for no one. The crowd erupted again, clapping and cheering, some even whistling. People who had walked past him hours earlier now lingered, taking pictures, sharing the moment on their phones. The performer bowed, a humble acknowledgement of every person who had doubted or ignored him before. As he packed his guitar to leave, the street felt different, alive in a way it hadn't been before. The lesson was clear. Patience, skill, and staying true to yourself could turn indifference into awe. And somewhere in the city, people would remember this corner street performer who reminded them that even the quietest voices can make the loudest impact.